We will see how we can create web applications using Google OAuth 2.4 to access Google data and to perform different operations in Google applications like Gmail, YouTube. Like for example, if we have the access to comment a particular YouTube, comment on a particular YouTube video, then web application by using web application we can comment on a particular YouTube video, and we can also delete the comment, we can like a video, we can dislike a video, we can do several operations based upon the scopes. So in order to create up web applications, first we need to create an application in console.cloud.google.com, and after creating an application we need to create the credentials. And I have created one credential. That is, we need to create the clients, and we need to provide the name of the client, we need to provide the authorized JavaScript origins, that is from which web URLs the our web application is accessing this application, and authorized redirect URIs, and to which URI our application, to which path or which route should this application could go back to after with the code after the consent is provided. And we need to provide all this info, and we need to click on the save, and after creating the client we will have the client ID and the client secret. So the flow of the OAuth will be like, first we need to make a request to one particular URL with the client ID and the required things which we can get from the documentation. And after making a request we will have the, after our consent, Google will redirect to the callback URI, and while redirecting, Google will attach a code to it. And the second step is we need to get the access token in exchange of code. So we need to make a post request to another URL which is specified in the documentation along with the code, client ID, and the required things, and we will get the access token. And once we got the access token, we can store the access token in a secure location, and we can use that access token to perform different operations. So we will see how we can create an web applications using Google Auth from the documentation. So the first step involves, first thing is, as I mentioned earlier, we need to create a project. So I have created a project, and after that I need to create a client. I have created a client where we provided the JavaScript origins, the redirect UI, URI details. And once these two are done, the next step is we need to set the authorization parameters, and this is the endpoint. We need to make a request to this particular endpoint, and while making a request we need to provide the client ID, the redirect URI, the response type and scope, which are the required things. And we can provide access type, or we can skip access type and state, which Google strongly recommends, and include granted scopes and enable granular consent logic, login hint prompt. These are optional things, and we need to attach all these as a query parameters while redirecting or while sending request. So our updated URL with, this is the endpoint, and we need to provide the client ID, the redirect URI, the response type scope as query parameters. So our updated URL will look like this. It contains the endpoint, and as a query parameters it contains the client ID, the redirect URI, the state, the response type, include granted scope, access type, scope, and all the other details. And once we make a request to this particular URI, we will be there redirected to the Google prompt user for consent URL. There we will be asked, like, this particular application is trying to access this data. Do you want to continue or cancel? And if we provide our consent there by clicking on continue, then we will be redirected to the callback URI which we provided while creating the application. And one more thing which is important here is the redirect URI which we are providing here as a query parameter should match the redirect URI we given while creating the client. And after all this, after our consent, we will be moved to the callback URL with the code. So next step is first we need to extract the code from the callback URI. The code will be transferred as a query parameter, and then we need to make a request to this particular post request to this particular URL. And while making a post request, we need to attach the client ID, the client secret, the code which we got from the previous step, the grant type, and the redirect URI. And after we are making a post request with by attaching these details, we will get a response, and that response contains the access token, the expires in the refresh token, the refresh token expires in scope token type. And from the response we can get the access token, we can store the access token, and we can use that access token to perform the different operations based upon the scopes which we provided here while sending the initial request to get the code. So this is the process of creating web applications using Google Auth. So here is the demo of it. And we have an application, and we have OAuth front end which is a client, and OAuth server here. In the OAuth front end, in the index, I have a button called login with Google, and by clicking on login with Google, I will be navigated to localhost 4000 auth Google. And inside the auth Google route, first, what we are doing is we are storing the client ID, Google client ID, Google client secret in the environmental variables, and we will be navigated to this auth Google route. And inside the auth Google route, what we are doing is we are making a we are constructing a URL first with the client ID, the redirect URI, the response type and scope as query parameters, and we are redirecting to that particular URI. And once after we got redirected to the particular URI, Google will ask for our consent, and after by clicking on the continue, we will be moved to the callback URI which is provided while creating the application. This is the route I have provided while creating a client in application. So we will be moved to redirected to this route, and inside, and also the code gets attached as query parameter while redirecting. So first we need to extract a code, and then we need to make a post request to this particular URL. And while making a post request, we need to attach the client ID, the client secret, the code, the grant type, the redirect URI. And one more important thing is the header should be this format, XWW form URL encoded format. And after successful verification, after verifying everything, we will get access token as a response, access token expiration, refresh token scope, and we will get multiple things as a response. And we are extracting the access token, and we are storing the access token in this access token variable. And we are setting the access token in the cookie using set secure function, which securely stores the access token in cookies. And inside this set secure function, we are storing the token we got in access underscore token in the cookie. And while storing, we are giving providing the options. The first one is the HTTP true only, true. And then we are also setting the expiry by using the max case. And then after that we are redirecting to the front end URL v2 profile Google, this particular route of the front end. So in the front end here we have that route, and inside this Google profile what we are doing is, if the Google access token is directly present, we are making a request to the Google URL to this path user info, and we are getting the data, and we are setting the data in user data state variable using set user data function. And if else if this is for refresh action. For example, first time when we are redirecting to a path from the backend to v2 profile Google. So inside v2 profile Google, and using the use location custom hook, the location dot path name will have the entire path, the path which we are in, and it the location dot path name dot includes v2 will check whether a URL contains a v2, and if else this piece of code gets executed. And here we are making a get request to this white server base URL, and this is the endpoint, this is the route to which we are making a get request, and we can see that route here, user profile Google. And inside this route what we are doing is, first we are getting the access token from the cookies, and then we are sending a get request to this particular URL, and we are providing the token access token we got in authorization header, and this will give the user data, and we are sending the user data back to the front end, and we are extracting the user data, and we are storing the user data in user data state variable using set user data function. And we are using conditional rendering to display the user data on the screen. And while the extracting data process is going on, we are displaying loading on the screen, and once the extraction process is done we are displaying the actual data on the screen. And one more thing here is, we got two things here. One is the front end, which is a client, and OAuth server, which is a server. So in order to run these things simultaneously in parallel, there is a package called concurrently. And in concurrently, in the install step, we are running two scripts in parallel. First thing is, what it will do is, it will change the directory to, it will move to the OAuth server directory, and it will run the npm i command. And second thing is, it will move to the OAuth front-end directory, and it will run the npm i command. What npm i will do is, it will check the packages dependencies available in the package.json. If those dependencies are not available in the node modules, it will install those dependencies in the node modules in order to run the app. And then dev, we are using concurrently to run two scripts. First thing is npm run dev, and first changing the directory to OAuth server and running npm run dev. And second thing is changing the directory to the OAuth front end and running npm run dev. In the OAuth server npm run dev, we are using nodemon. So inside this dev, we will have nodemon index.js, which will start the index.js file available in OAuth server. And in the front end, in the dev, we have white, which will start our front end client. So we will simply run npm run dev. We can see that nodemon started our backend and white started our front end. We can go this to this particular, this is the application we built. And by clicking on login with Google, what will happen is, we will make we will be redirected to this auth Google, where we are constructing a Google auth URL, and we are redirecting to Google Auth URL, and then we will be redirected to the Google consent. We will be asked consent, and once the consent is provided, we will be redirected to the callback URL with the code, and where we are making a post request to the particular URL, and we are getting the access token, and access token gets stored in the cookie, and then we are redirecting to this front end V2 profile Google, and where we are again making the request. We are redirecting, making a request to user profile Google, and we are using the access token, and we are getting the user data, and we are storing that user data in the user data state variable using set user data function, and then we are displaying the user data on the screen. So by clicking on login, we move to this, and we need to click check, select the account, and we need to, by clicking on continue, we are providing our consent for the web application which we created in the Google to access our data. So by clicking on continue, we have provided consent, and it got the data because we are moving to user info. User info, by moving to this, by making a request to this particular URL, we will get the user info. This is my Google account user info, and this is, and we are displaying the data by getting the data, storing the data in user data state variable, and displaying it. Hello Manoj, you have been logged in with. This is the my email, and this is my name.